to know about the Moors.
The what?
The Moors. The people who built civilization. The people from Spain from a long time ago.
The Moors?
The Moors.
The Moors? Why are you interested in the Moors?
We were visiting the library and we came across a book about Arab slave trade in African countries. And there was a mention of a people called the Moors, but the book didn't explain too much about them. We're hoping you could tell us.
I'm busy. I have got some work to do.
No, we want to know about it now.
I've got work. I have to finish.
You can do it later, please.
You find books. You see, all these are books. Read.
No, we want to know about it from you.
And what do you want to know again?
The Moors.
Moors. Moors. Okay, first say Moors.
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 Take a seat. Moors. Moors. The Moors. They seem like a people of long time ago. But their achievements and what they have put together and what they have given us. Oh, it is still with us. These tiles that we have on this sitting room, in this great library, they are from the Moors. Now, where do I begin the story?
From the beginning.
The beginning. Oh, Moors have no beginning. You see, to know about the Moors and the name Moors, you have to know about the ancient and what they meant by Moors. When they said Moors, what did they mean by Moors? You need to know what the ancient people knew about Africa in ancient time. That you need to know. So you need to go to what they call the ancient map, the map of the ancient world, and understand what was the meaning that the ancient meant when they said Moors. Now, let's see if we can, if I can find an ancient map for you, and then I explain that the name Moors meant black. It was a Roman word, Moors or Moros, for anybody that was black. So everywhere you encounter the word Moors, you're talking about black people.
So the Moors are black?
No, Moors were not black. They were ink black. They were charcoal black. They were 150 million midnight black. Now, the story of the Moors in Spain is a beautiful story. It actually begins with a man of Ethiopia that was named Gamar ibn Budongo. And I suppose you'd be asking me a question and saying, what's Ethiopia got to do with the Moors?
Yeah, what does it have to do with the Moors?
Now, to do that, we have to find an ancient map of Ethiopia.
What's the difference between an ancient map and a normal map?
Well, most of the maps you have today are maps that are distorted.
How?
They pretend to be ancient map, but they are recent maps. You understand?
No.
Distorted maps. They are recent maps, but they are not ancient maps. But the real ancient maps, you might not see. So, let me see if I can find an ancient map. Come. You see, for example, this is a map of Ptolemy's. A map of Africa, of Ptolemy's. Ptolemy was a ruler, a Greek ruler of Egypt. after the Africans lost Egypt, the Greeks, inserted their own leadership and rulership in Africa. Now, if you look at this map of Africa, this is the River Nile. And there are only 3 countries in Africa at the time, or the whole Africa was known by 3 countries. It was known by the Ethiopia and Egypt, which were the same thing. Ethiopia and Egypt, according to Ptolemy's map, were the same thing. Now, then, so here you have Ethiopia and you have Egypt. Then the rest of Africa is called what? What is that?
Ethiopia Interior.
Yes, Ethiopia Interior. Now, the other part of Africa, North Africa now, was known as what?
Libya Interior.
Yeah, Libya Interior. There is also Libya Superior. Libya Superior, Libya Interior. When you hear the name Libya, you don't think Libya is a recent name. No. And it has nothing to do with a country called Libya. The country called Libya stole the name of an ancient, of the ancients that used to describe the whole part of Africa. And they called it Serif. That's just like Ghana stole a name of an ancient kingdom of Ghana and took and used it. But you can see that almost the whole of Africa is called Ethiopia. Can you see?
Yes.
The whole of Africa is called Ethiopia. When the ancients talk about Ethiopia, they are talking about any African person. When they say there is a man of Ethiopia, it means he came from any part of Africa. There's another map which hopefully we can find. So there was this man, a man called Gamal ibn Budongo, and he was a friend of a man called Tarifa. Tarifa was a great general. He had fought in many battles in Africa. He had fought in many battles in Africa, and he used to tell his son also called Tarifa, and he used to tell him many stories of ancient African empires and African kings, particularly that of Hannibal, the Carthaginian, Hannibal Barca, and the Numidian Cavalry. And he never stopped to tell his son that Hannibal had been betrayed. Hannibal went into Spain and he went into Portugal, and he ruled Spain and he ruled Portugal and he ruled Rome. And however, the Romans couldn't get rid of the Africans who ruled Spain and Portugal, and they built a new city that was called Carthago Nova. Now, the Tarifa, he used to tell his son about the betrayal, that he had been betrayed, Hannibal had been betrayed by a Nubian a prince from Numidia. And that prince was called Massassina. Massassina had allied with the Romans, particularly a guy called, a Roman general called Scipio Africanus. And he had given Africanus fresh troops of maybe 20,000 men, and also showed him the way into Carthage, to attack Carthage from the rear, so that when Hannibal was fighting this Roman at the Battle of Zama, the African troops of the Numidian cavalry, they took the side of the Romans and Hannibal was defeated. So Tarifa always told his son, you come from a great people and a great nation who value their independence and have built civilizations, not only civilized their own country, but civilized the rest of the world. So when the Arabs came conquering Africa, and arrived in the 6th century in North Africa in about 705 BC, they took most of Tripolitania, which is present-day Libya, and they took Tunisia. However, when they got to Morocco, Tarifa, they said, no, you're not coming in here. And they fought an Arab person. I think he was called Ben Natifa. They fought Ben Natifa and fought him to stand still, stopped him, from entering Mauritania, and killed him. Now, this Arab general Natifa, the African took long to when they heard the Arabs and Islam, a new religion, not Christianity. The Africans had been ruled by the Vandals and the Romans, and they thought, maybe the Arabs could be better. And most of these Arabs, had been, the armies were mainly black because the Arabs didn't have enough numbers to be able to, to subdue the whole of Africa. So they relied on troops and soldiers from the areas they had captured. And so the Africans thought maybe, they are black and they have a different religion and a different God, maybe they'll be okay. And it didn't take them long to realize that they were as vicious and greedy as the Romans and the Vandals and the Greeks and all the other people who had come to capture Africa. So they organized under a man called Kusera. And they kicked the Arabs and they killed, that General Ben Natifa. Now, the Arabs went back and they kicked the Arabs right into, Mauritania. And the Arabs mobilized, under General Newman, a general called Newman, and, came back and retook Carthage and took Carthage. Now, Kusera, who had ruled Mauritania, for 5 years, he was killed. But the battle was taken up by a woman warrior called Dahir, daughter of Kahina. She was a fierce woman. She fought long and hard and fought and grilled all them Arabs to stand still, kicked them out of most parts of North Africa, chased them into Tripolitania and told them to stay there. Now this General Newman, when he was fighting and almost defeated, he was put and cornered by a young son of Tarifa, the old Tarifa. He cornered him, and a brilliant general he was. And he says to him, you Arabs, you fighting for glory. Because when the Arabs fight, they say, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Saying the glory to God. They say, you fighting for glory, we fighting for independence. I'm going to leave you, to let you live. But don't dream of coming back here. So he left him. Now, this general, he never forgot that his life had been saved by this man. The Arabs got fresh troops and were able to defeat Kahina, and she was killed in about 708, which marked really the end of African resistance in North Africa. And most of the soldiers who had fought against the Arab armies, once they saw that the Arabs, were for the main part, their armies were black, so they also joined, these Arab armies. And the Arabs were just content to have a govern over African territories, but they left the Africans to govern themselves as long as they paid tribute and they converted to Islam. Now, the only area that was not captured in Africa was a place called Quetta, which was near Spain, and that because it was under the rule of Byzantium. And this area was ruled by a man called Julian. And this Julian, he had sent his daughter, and his daughter's name was Florinda. He had sent his daughter to Spain, because Spain at the time was under the rule of the Visigoths. And the Visigoth king was called Roderick. So Florinda had gone to visit the court of Roderick, and Roderick raped her. So Julian had a very big grudge against the king of the Visigoths. Now, he persuaded the governor of North Africa, the Arab governor of North Africa, who was called General Musa, to invade Spain. And he says, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it has got great cities, and it's not defended, it's got, he said, you remember the Africans had ruled it, and they built these beautiful cities, and the cities are still there, and it has gold, and it has silver. Most of what he told him was really lies, because he wanted him to invade Spain. So when Musa, what he did is he got a few men, I think 500 men. He borrowed 3 boats from, Julian, and he invaded Spain, and the Africans landed at a place called Tarifa, And there was a mountain there, and they called it the Geber Tarifa, or the mountain of Tarifa, because Tarifa, the man who had saved that general of Newman, was the one who was given to command the African armies into Spain. And the year was 710. So when they got in, they landed at this mountain, they raided a couple of villages and towns, they got some, things to root and take home with them. And they went and told Musa that, we've gone, we've fought, we didn't really lose a lot of people, and we've come back. And he says, well, are they rich? He says, well, they are not rich, but they are a territory that could be conquered. So that encouraged Musa. And Musa then he organized a huge army of Africans of 15,000 strong, and gave them again to the same person, General Tariq, to lead into Spain and Portugal. The year was 711, and he landed at an island called Gibraltar, Geber, Tarifa, which is the same place. And he had learned that the Vandal king, the Visigoth king, Roderick, was in the north fighting the Basques. The Basques are a dark-skinned people. They were the part of the remnants of the black people who were the first people to populate Europe. Known as they were known at the time as Gromoldi. So they have always opposed Spain, Spanish rule. They have always wanted independence for themselves. Now, at that stage, the Africans got in. The Visigoth king abandoned the fight against the Basques, and he organized a huge army to come and fight the Africans. But before the Africans came, to invade Spain, they had something strange that had happened to this king. I can't tell you.
Please tell us.
No.
We want to know.
Why? Why?
Because the story has been interesting so far.
Okay, tell me what I've said.
You were telling us about how Ethiopia was the place where it all started. How Ethiopia was divided into... It wasn't divided because Ethiopia was basically all the countries in Africa before it was how it is now. And then you stopped on where you were going to tell us about what happened, but then you said you won't tell us.
What did you understand? What did I say?
I understood how the Africans was a great people, but how the greed of the Romans, the Greeks, and the Arabs wanted to take over Africa.
And how Africa had many good people, and they fought really hard, but then people were greedy, like the Romans.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did they still get their independence?
Well, that's the story we are telling. Well, basically what I have said to you was that African people valued independence. They want enough Arabs to subdue Africa, so the Arabs relied on African skill. Most invaders are always few. They can't lift the whole country to invade because there'd be nobody to defend the country. So what the Arabs would do is they would recruit Africans. And I was telling you a story of Africans who stood to defend themselves against Arabs, and after distinguishing themselves in battle, the Arabs co-opted them, made them generals, and then persuaded them to go and invade other territories. The idea of invading Spain and Portugal was an Arab idea, led by this governor called Musa. However, the man that he put in charge of invading Spain, Tarifa, knew that Africans had ruled Spain and Portugal, and he knew of the treachery of the Numidians, who had sided with the Romans or with invaders to defeat Hannibal in Spain and in Europe and in Africa. So that's where we are. But the story was before the Africans before the Africans reached or fought a war with this man, Roderick. The court of Roderick had been visited by two old men, almost covered up to their eyes, and they had said to Roderick that we come from the temple of Hercules, which is near the Spanish coast, and that every king who had become a king of Spain, that tower is guarded by a huge door, and an iron door, and that door has got several locks, and everybody who becomes a king puts a lock. But that there is a secret inside that temple, and that no king should ever seek to discover the riddle of the secret of that temple, because no king shall discover it and live. Now, after they disappeared, Roderick was curious, so he went to this tower, and he, found it was guarded by a beast that was made of iron, and he told the beast to let him pass, and he passed, and he entered, and he found a casket, like a coffin, made out of silver and gold. And then he opened it, and inside he found a big tapestry, like a piece of cloth, and there were faces of black people on horses. And it said on the writing that with these words, and today you shall lose your throne, to these men. And just as he was talking, he heard sounds of screeches and horses and battle axes, and then they all rushed out of this tower. And when they came out of the tower, they found the two men who he had seen out dead. And very soon African people came and torched the temple, and they fought Rodriguez ran away, but he went and mobilized, because there were only 15,000 Africans, and Roderick went and mobilized 70,000 to come and fight these Africans.
So it was the sound of the horses was real.
Yes, the sound of horses was real.
So just immediately after he opened the coffin to see what was inside, he heard the sound.
Yes.
After he read it.
He heard the Africans coming, and then he ran away. But then he went and organized, to come back, to fight. And the armies met at a place called Xerxes. And he had 70,000 Christian armies, against 15,000 Africans. But Tariq told the Africans, he says, behind you is the sea, the Mediterranean. In front of you is the enemy. So you have nowhere to run. You either run into the sea or you run off the enemy. And they fought. They fought for a week. Long, heavy war. And in the end, the Africans broke into Roderick's forces, and they chased them away. And then they established the African rule over Spain and Portugal. That lasted from 711 to 1492, January 2nd, 1492. So, but the Africans didn't stop there. After they defeated the Spaniards, the forces of the Visigoths, they then chased them into France. They went into France, advanced into a significant part of France. But then they found a French king at the place called Poitiers, and the Frank king, who was called Charles Martel, defeated the Africans in France. So the African says, okay, France is cold anyway, we don't like it, and it's poor, because most of the French kings just lived in barns, all covered up with just a little window for air and light. They said, we'll go back to Spain. So they went to Spain and started building Spain. And they built beautiful roads and the roads were paved. They had paved, raised platforms, paved for people to walk. At the height of these Africans, at this dynasty, that started from 711, they Africans had almost, they governed it from Toledo. And they built all these cities of Seville, of Cordoba, of Toledo. In Cordoba alone, they had a population of 1 million people. 1 million people. 1 million people. If I was to look at my notes, 1 million people, look at this. They had 10,000, 1 million population, 200,000 homes, beautiful homes, oh, wonderful homes. 800 public schools. Almost everybody who wanted to study could go to school in Spain, in a land that the Africans called Andalusia. Public school. To compare with the entire Europe at the time, the whole of Europe would have just one university. One. And 99% of Europeans were not educated, and some kings in Europe could not even read and write. But here you have 800 public schools. 800 public schools. You know, colleges and universities, 10,000 palaces. Big, beautiful, grand palaces. 900 public baths. You know, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Congo, there is no public bath at all. But here you have 900. And most parts of Europe considered bathing a sin. You could go to jail or be killed for bathing. It was supposed to be satanic, to bathe. Oh, I'm telling you, public bath. Then they had so many universities of education, universal education. Had hospitals and doctors and physicians. And to become a doctor, you have to sit an exam and be examined and given a certificate to go and practice. Most of these, one of the rulers, a Moorish scholar, Sheikh Asha Sekandi, of the early 13th century. He wrote a book about cities and a treatise on agriculture, Sekandi. That's like a name from Uganda. These were powerful people, powerful. And Hakma, who had a library, Caliph al-Hakama, he set up a library of 600,000 books. 600,000. There is no library in East Africa now that has that number of books. 600,000. But at the time, them Africans, they have that kind of library.
You do know that in schools today, they teach us that all this development happens in Greece and England and places like that?
Yes. No, I don't know. No teacher could teach me that. How is that possible?
That's what they tell us.
No. No teacher should be able to tell you that, because that teacher would show their ignorance. The teacher must know about the Umayyad. The Umayyad that I am telling you, the dynasty that ruled Andalusia, it started from 711 up almost to 1035. In 1035. Now, it began to decline, to weaken, because most of the rulers who were in Spain and Portugal, them Africans, they got contented with living in a life of luxury and having wine and eating grapes, because the Africans introduced olives and pomegranate and oranges and onions and aubergine and courgette and sugarcane and most of the foods and ginger, most of the food that you have today was introduced by Africans into Spain, because at the time most of the Spaniards didn't really have food apart from hunting and getting some game. And Some of them even hunted each other for food. Now, when that began to decline, here in Africa, in a place in Morocco, an emir called Yahya had traveled to Mecca. And from Mecca, he got to know of another reformer whom he came back with, and this reformer was called Yassin. And Yassin came and established a school near a place called, near what we call present-day Senegal. Now, in Senegal, this reformer taught, and he taught that there should be justice in the world, and people shouldn't really pay taxes unless the taxes were in the book, in the Quran, or in the book of God. Now, his followers were called Morabites. You are called Morabites. Eventually, they became Almoravid. They became a huge, very big group. They became a big group. They organized an army, and they took over almost the whole of North Africa. And it's now the Africans who are in Spain suffering, the Christian armies had started to organize and push them away and push them away until a gentleman called Muhammad, who was the ruler of Seville, and about 1083, Muhammad, ruler of Seville, he came to Yusuf, who was the ruler of North Africa, the ruler of the Almoravid. And he said to them, come and help us. So Yusuf went in and, he helped kick out the Christians and he came back. But after the Africans had got rid of these Christians, the Christians reorganized. And most of the Africans were lazy. So Yusuf decided, enough. He got an army of 15,000 men, including 6,000 Senegalese cavalry, who were on horses. They were riding Arabian white horses. And they would move as swift as the wind. Before I could blink like this, they are gone. And they carried giant swords with powerful blades. Because in Toledo, most of the blades from Toledo that the Africans were making were the best blades in the world. So he took these 6,000 men, in the army, 15,000 crossed into Spain, and the Christians were able to put together an army of 80,000 men against 15,000. So Yusuf, who was, by the way, now an old general, he is in the thickest of the battle, and they're fighting, and the Christians think they are winning. But coming towards the evening, Yusuf had read the battle very well. You see, he had kept the 6,000 Senegalese troops on their magnificent Arabian horses, well fed and well watered. And man, they were dark. They said the general was as black as coal, and the soldiers were black as steel. The only thing glittering were the white horses, and the blades, and the shields. Almost in the 11th hour, this Yusuf unleashed the Africans on horses, moving like swift wind. They came across the Christian armies and slaughtered them all. The Christians turned the moment they saw them Africans on horses, they fled. They threw their cross and their banners and they started running away. Then the Africans won the battle. And again, the Africans established the rule. This time, entirely African. Black people from North Africa, no Arab involved. From Senegal, known as the Almoravid, from present-day Senegal and Gambia and North Africa and Ghana. And they ruled Spain. They ruled Portugal, and they ruled it well. They had big aqueducts taking water in lead pipes. They would carry water for almost 100 miles. And they had a beautiful irrigation system that grew corn and grapes and pomegranate and oranges and tangerines. They wrote treatises on agriculture, then treatises on medicine. For example, a man called Havicina Bokhara, Say, have you seen a Boko Haram?
Have you seen a book?
Have you seen a Boko Haram? He lived in 980 AD and he died in 1037. And he wrote the books. Let me tell you the books he wrote. He wrote The Utility and Advantages of Science. That's one book he wrote. He wrote another book called Astronomical Observations. He wrote another book called Health Remedies. Another book called The Canons or the Laws of Physics. Another book, Mathematical Theorems. Another book called Arab Language. Then he wrote another book called The Origin of Resurrection of the Mind and Body. Imagine. Then he wrote a book of physics and metaphysics. And then he also wrote a book called The Encyclopedia of Human Knowledge. One man! Have you seen him? Boko Haram! I know him well. I think I was one of his sons a long time ago. Because I love books. I must have got it from Havisina, Boko Haram. So the Umayyad, the Umayyad, African people, complete African people. The Almoravid African people. And they bring all this beautiful, magnificent territory of Andalusia. And they rule it, and they rule it well. And they would even get Christian learners and teach them. People would come from all over Europe, all over England and Baghdad to study in Africa. Their boats, merchant ships, would sail across the Mediterranean. They would go into China and India, bring the most spices, and they made silk and brocade and calico. And they did almost everything. And at the time when Europe thought the world was totally flat, they taught geography on globes that showed the entire world was round. Oh, these were the Moors. But they didn't stop there. No. They had several dynasties. I've already talked about the Umayyad. And then the Umayyad were replaced by the Almoravid. And after the Almoravid, another group of Africans known as the Omahadi. Now, that battle that I told you that Yusuf fought, with the Christians, it took place in a place called Zaraka. And it was in 1086. Remember, in 1096, the European Crusaders, are launching a crusade against the Arabs in Jerusalem. So most of the Arabs would be tied up there. They would have nothing they would be doing elsewhere. They'd be tied up in the fight against the Christian armies from Europe. So Spain was not involved in the crusade. Why? Because Spain was under the rule of the Africans, who again were ruling Spain after the Battle of Daraka, and they established the Almoravid dynasty. Now, that Almoravid dynasty lasts almost up to 1234, almost up to 1230 or up 1230. But in around 1134. But in around 1147, again in Morocco, another black man who calls himself Mahdi. When black people get into religion, they get all sorts of ideas. Some of them become gold. Some of them think they have seen Jesus. Some of them think they have walked with this apostle and this person. And so now there is the man who says the Prophet Muhammad was subhanahu wa ta'ala has appointed me to become ruler of all the world. And he was called Mahdi. And his followers were called the Al-Mahdi. And they also established a huge army, and they went into Spain, and they conquered the whole of Andalusia, Spain, Portugal, and the Pyrenees, and parts of Europe. And they moved down south into Africa, and conquered most lands of Africa, almost up to present-day Congo. At that time, the whole of that area is called Ethiopia. And they established trade, they established forts, and trading gold, and they forced most of the European rulers to pay tribute. And European tribute is, where a vessel or a king, begins to pay taxes. And why they are paying taxes is because they don't want you to invade them. And they're saying, if you invade us, we will be in trouble. So they begin to, to pay, taxes. So these Africans rule Spain and Portugal from 1230. And they built, for example, Castile, a castle of Gibraltar in 1160, and they built the beautiful mosque of Seville, which is known as the Mosquita. They built most of the magnificent architecture that African people put together. So the Moors were black people, but Moors existed, the word Moor as black existed even before the Arab conquest of North Africa, because the Moors were the Roman word, and the Romans called almost every African who was black Moor or Moros, or they called them Ethiop, which means people who had been burned or who had been kissed by the sun. And these Moors ruled Spain and Portugal for a very long time, from 711 to 1492, when a black man named Abu Abdillah surrendered the keys of Alhambra. And his mother, the formidable Aisha, is supposed to have said to him, "Whip like a woman what you couldn't defend like a man." I'm talking about black people who were in charge, who knew the business of governorship and trade, who favored history and commerce and agriculture, who ruled vast territories and ruled them well. I'm not talking about the African people of today. I'm talking about African people who favored independence. African people like Kahina, a woman who would rise to beat off Arabs and send them away. African people of today, the women, they are just fighting cream in their hair, laugh, roasting themselves in all the boilers for their head. They are not like African people of those times who ruled the world, ruled it well. They taught everybody how to navigate and compass. And when you hear of people like Prince Henry the Navigator, he never navigated nothing. It was the African people that taught them how to float a boat onto the river and onto the lake and onto the ocean. This is knowledge you cannot afford to miss.
Can you show us some pictures about the Moors?
Yeah, pictures.
Was there an African name for the Moors? You said the Moors is a Roman name.
Yes, the Moors. But you see, African people didn't call themselves people. When they trade with you, they call you a name. African people didn't, they were African. They didn't distinguish between, they knew. At the time, African people thought the whole world was full of African people, full of black people, so they didn't call it a name. They'd call a kingdom after a king, but it was normally other people who would give names. Oh, now are they Moors? Let's see. Let us see if we can get pictures of these Moors. Come close, come. Well, here you are. Pictures of the black people who ruled Spain and who ruled it well. They are African people, black people. These images are all over Europe, showing people unmistakable black. Some of them are on the crest. Like when you have a city normally has something that represents it. And then you find African people representing them, representing the crest, representing the city, representing liberty. African people. Now, some of them will show that like this is a hole, and on top of a hole, there is black people. These are all crests. Like each city has got something that represents it. And as you can see, on all those cities, Look at these. African people with gold on their heads. Look at those images. Breastplates, with gold and lapis lazuli and hematite and malachite. These are beautiful people. These are African people. Still in most of these museums. Look at these kings and queens. These are not slaves. These are not, look. Oh, look at them, African people. Look at the gold. Look at how they are depicted. Now, this one is somebody serving, but look at how he's dressed. Look at the crest of a city. A city that African queen and an elephant. Look at them. If only I could get your clothes and I could get your gold. If only I could get your beauty and I could get your grace. If only I could get all this lapis lazuli. If I could get that hematite and malachite. Look, ambassadors and kings and queens and commanders. You talk about beauty. The standard of beauty in Europe was African people. The standard of beauty everywhere was African people. These are African people. We're talking about African. Now, what color are these people? They are not even black. They are very, very black. They are darker than me, darker than everybody. They would choose the blackest of the black. And he would be the one that would be chosen. And at the time, if you had white skin, you would think there is something wrong with you. And people would think you can't understand because you are white. And when people thought of intellect, they thought of African people. It was us. It was black people.
Lovely.
Even coins. That is a coin that has a black head. Look at these images. In the park. These are not slaves. These are not servants. These are not miner. A miner would not, this is all silver and gold and diamond. This is Africa's glory. This is a period when black men ruled the world. This is a period when we ruled the world and ruled it well. Oh, I'm telling you. This is the golden age of the African Moors. The Moors who ruled Andalusia, who ruled Spain and ruled Portugal and part of France. The black Moors who ruled all these lands and ruled them well. For 800 years, African people. And you see them brother dragging a camel. Fishermen and horsemen and horsebacks. Men who carved fine motifs and gold and jewelry. This is the patron saint of Germany. Look at them. Look at African Moors playing chess. Look at Moors. This is a book of Stanley Lampo. The picture is on book of Stanley Lampo's Moors in Spain. Look at their crowns. Look at their coat of arms. Look at their power. Look at their glory. Look at the pose. Look at the poise. Look at the gaze. Look at the gait. Look at the battle plates. Look at the necklaces. Look at the earrings. Look at the Moors. The rulers of Spain and rulers of Portugal. That's not it. That's not the end. I have more. You want to see more?
Yes.
More kings?
Yes.
More empires?
Yes.
More rulers?
Yes.
The empire of the Moors. Empire of the Moors. Now this one is to live for.
More. Yeah.
Yes. And ruled North Africa and ruled it well. Will my children remember the Moors? Will they know that they have the blood of... No! Look! No! I see it. Come on. This This is the food. This is the pomegranate. These are the grapes. This is the trays. Look at the maid and the servant who is serving. Look at how beautiful. Look at the bottles that have the perfume and the wine. Look at the colors and the decorations. Look at the bowls and the jars. Look at the gold. Look at the brother. All inlaid with gold. These were not people who had no clothes. The tanneries, the jeans that tanned beautiful shoes, the silk and the brocade, the spinning wheel, the spinning mills. These were African Moors. These were African people from Senegal, from present-day Mali, from Numidia, from Ethiopia. These are African people that came and ruled Spain and ruled Portugal. The Sarakori, the Bambara. These were African people, the Akan, the African people that came and took over the whole world, the whole known world. Look at the Parises, look at the door, look at the tapestry, look at the embroidery. Look at this. Oh, look at the columns, look at the pillars, look at the temples, look at the pillows. Look at the chests inlaid with gold. Look at the elephant staring at you.
The tiger.
Yes, the tiger. And look at the brother who is standing with the tiger, tall and proud, breasted of the sun. Oh, the Moors, the black people who ruled Spain and who ruled it well. Look at the gods. Look at the invincible. Look at the immortals. These were the people that I told you that came from Senegal. They rode on horses, Arabian horses, all white. They flickered and fled and moved so fast and so furious. There they are. They carried 1,000 swords. And look at the sword. And look at the blood. I mean, how would they fight in all these clothes? I still don't know. I mean, he wore tons and tons of clothes because clothes was nothing to them. They knew how to make brocade and silk. Look at these people. Give us a song. Give us a good song. Look at how they took a fiesta. Even up to now in Spain, at 2 o'clock, people go to rest up to 4. The fiesta was introduced by African people. Look at the bed. Look at the living room. Look at the luxury. These were African people, black people. People like you, people like me. And will my children remember the Moors? Will they remember the suffering and the pain they went through to build the civilization so that they can enjoy the peace, the quiet in their garden of reeds? So that they can sit and eat and drink and keep the enemy at bay? Will my children remember the Moors, the achievements of Andalusia, the cities of Toledo, of Cordoba, of Seville, of Alhambra, of Morocco, of Gar, of Timbuktu, the cities of Walata, of Wangara, the lapis lazuli? Will they remember chess, that it was invented by them, and white maids and maiden servants would serve them? White that rule, look, they are ready, and they are steady, and they are steady. They are ready and they are steady. They are fast and they are furious. They are everywhere, every time. They can appear and disappear. They have the spirit of their Gungun. I am talking about the Moors, beautiful Moors. Even in battle, they dress so well with silk and brocade. These are not soldiers used to trenches. They know how to party, they know how to dress. They have the style, they have the stamina. They don't stagger, they don't stutter. They carry the symbol of independence. These are African people, African Moors. I am talking about rulers of Spain and Portugal. I am talking about African people. Look at when they meet Martyr and say to him, you are supposed to pay tribute, white man, or we will come and get you. Look at the homes and houses they galvanize for themselves. And what happened to traitors? You betray a black person, your head will be chopped off by this warrior, defender of independence. And he says, only liberty will suffice. Look at the palaces where African people lived. Look at what they built. These are African people in their palaces. They are all ingrained, the columns are all ingrained with silk and brocade. These are African people, darker than 150 million midnights. These are black people, like you and me. They are not eating chips. They are not eating junk food and drinking Coca-Cola. They are not smoking cigarettes or taking drugs. They are not fighting to vote. These are African people. They are not forcing immunization on their own children. These are African rulers of Spain and Portugal and Russia and France. These African people. I am talking about the Moors that ruled Spain and ruled it well. History is only useful when you can take that history, see that history and make it your story and live the story. Our people suffered ruling other countries. Our people suffered building powerful temples and palaces and universities. Our people suffered in slavery, working for others. What does that tell us? It tells us that you don't have a right to get tired. You don't have a right to sit there and laugh. Your job should be to build a civilization and to build an empire, similar to what your ancestors did. That is your job. That is your responsibility. That is the reason we tell you the story. Just like Tarifa, who had the story of Hannibal, who had the story of Massacina. And he says, Hannibal ruled Europe for 30, 40, 50 years. I will rule it for 800 years. There was a time when white people never thought that they could get rid of black people. You would die, you would be born, live and die, and African people still rule over you. But they ruled well. They were just and fair. They had good laws and good governance. That is tomorrow's work for you.
I'm Nkosi Muntu, and people that recognize me would know I do a show on TV Africa called Songa Mbele. Today I visited a library with a few of my brothers, and we visited a beautiful library which had many, many books and a wise man which was there. We asked him about Moors because we came across a book which had Moors and people, the Moors and things. So we wanted to know more about the Moors. So we decided to go to the library to look for this old wise man, and we saw him there and he taught us about the Moors. Basically, what we learned about the Moors is they were black, ink black, charcoal black, and they were great people. They ruled over Spain, Portugal, and so many other countries. They were great rulers, and they had civilization before other people. They knew how to build houses, they knew how to make silk, they knew how to make cotton, all these beautiful things. They invented the gun, and a white man came and took it over and claimed it theirs, yet it wasn't. They got the gunpowder from China because the Chinese used to use it for fireworks, and they got the gunpowder and made it as a weapon. So in schools they normally teach us that civilization started in places like Greece and England and places like that, but it did not. Civilization started in Africa, and we learned very much from our visit to the library. People need to wake up and realize that civilization did start in Africa, in Ethiopia, because it did, And I was hiding in the shadows before, knowing that civilization started in Europe, in Greece, or England, or something like that. And in schools, they always teach us how in Africa, when Europe had a civilization, we were living in trees and we didn't have anything, any clothes or anything like that. But that's not true. And we didn't know how to bathe, we didn't do this and that, but that's not true because we're the ones that started civilization, Africa. And Europe is the place where everybody used to think bathing is a sin. You could even go to jail for bathing. And yeah, so I think I've learned that civilization started in Africa, and I'm glad I've now woken up to see the real facts.
Hello, my name's Herita Agaza. I've learned that the Molas were people from Spain. These people was so great that they fought so many wars that that people couldn't even believe. People will say I'm lying. Well, let me tell you, my brothers and sisters, we're not lying. These people from these Molas are very brilliant people. They're not black, they're ink black, darker than you ever imagine. And also, I don't even know.
My name is Bondo Tenjeza, and today a professor explained to me about the ancient Moors. And I learned that the Moors were basically a black people from Africa who conquered the Arabic country, the Arabs, and the Europeans, and fought against Christianic crusades and Islamic crusades, and conquered places like Portugal, Spain, and other parts of North Africa. And they were great people. They lived in life of luxury. They had vast riches. You know, they used to wear magnificent clothes, gold, jewelry. The professor explained that they rode white horses, giant white horses. They used to go to war with long guns, with gunpowder shipped from China. They lived in big palaces with columns, and the guards had many swords, tremendous big swords. They were wearing gold helmets, gold jewelry, silk. Even the servants were covered in gold jewelry, as if they were kings of this time. When you go around today, you see that people feel that civilization started in places like Greek and Rome, but that is an amazing lie. Civilization started from Africa. In the time when black people were living in palaces, castles with riches, the Europeans were in a time of disease. You know, the professor said that they thought bathing was a sin. They lived in a dirty place. You know, they had one university in the whole of Europe, and yet in Africa there were like 3,000 schools. You know, they taught you to become a doctor, but in Europe that was never there. So basically what I want to tell my fellow students, fellow Africans, is that be proud of your race. You come from greatness, but at this moment you're not showing greatness. People are not living like how they used to live that long ago. Yet it's said that when future comes, they're supposed to develop. So yeah, we need to develop.